Hey J1s, I just wanted to pop on here and give a quick story that Dr. John encouraged that I share, just to make this section on cardiopulmonary a little bit more applicable, and so you guys could understand why it's so important that you do spend the time to really learn this material. So I work as a professional student nurse at the Texas Children's Hospital Pediatric ICU, and a couple of weeks ago, I was working, and a nurse called me into his patient's room and said, "Go ahead and do a heart assessment on this patient and tell me what you hear and what you think is going on." And my immediate thought was, "Oh my God, am I going to remember anything, first of all?" So I pulled out a stethoscope and I listened in all the spots, and I heard a really loud whoosh. And I've never really heard anything when I'm doing a heart assessment, so I wasn't exactly sure what I was hearing, but I felt the patient's radial pulse and I kept listening, identified the S1, S2, and was able to determine that I was hearing a murmur between S1 and S2. And so from there, I was able to determine, okay, so it's a systolic murmur, and I'm hearing it in the spot where the aortic valve is and where the mitral valve is. So I know from knowing my cardio that I was hearing aortic stenosis and a mitral valve regurgitation. So the nurse pulled me over, we looked at the chart and we went through it together. And I told him what I thought, and we looked at the doctor's notes, and that's exactly what was going on. And he turned to me and he's like, "Okay, I'm going to ask you some patho." And so he said, "Okay, what do you think the biggest concern is with this patient?" And I said, "Oh, if he's got a mitral regurgitation and an aortic stenosis, that's going to put a lot of work on the heart, and he could end up with left ventricular hypertrophy." And we looked on the chart, and that was exactly what the echo ended up saying that they had ordered for him. And he said, "Okay, and then what is exactly are we concerned with left ventricular hypertrophy?" I'm thinking back using my patho brain. I'm thinking, well, I'd be concerned about heart failure with poor ejection fraction. And we looked in the next part of the notes, and that's exactly what was going on. And he said, "Okay, now if that's happening on the left side, what do you think could happen with this patient?" And I said, "Well, we were going to have a buildup of blood going back onto the pulmonary side, backing up into the pulmonary system, and we'd be concerned about increased pulmonary resistance on that side and pulmonary edema." And he said, "Okay, and what would that present as?" And I thought for a second, and I was like, "Pulmonary edema." And he said, "Yes, but what would it look like?" I said, "Pink frothy sputum." And then he turned over to the dad, and the dad looked at me and he was like, "That's exactly what happened in the middle of the night last night." And it was one of those moments where I realized how important it is that I spent so much time learning the material during this exam so that I understood the cardio and pulmonary system. Because right now it's just all book stuff and tests and theoretical questions. But one day you're going to be in the hospital with a patient who actually has these things going on. And so for me, bringing it back to what I'm going to actually be doing and why this is so important is crucial for me to do well in the class. So keep reminding yourself as you study for this material that one day you're going to have a patient and all of this stuff is actually going to come into play. And you need to understand what the risks are when you see something and how is it going to present. So hopefully that helps you guys kind of work through this material and understand why it's so important that you guys are doing it.